line item budgets. As we know, they provide a great service to the police department, generally at no cost to the city, and they volunteer hundreds and hundreds of hours. I know that Council Rodriguez and Council Payano know this extremely well in their previous service as well, and so that's something that we've been trying to advocate for the last couple of years, and we're happy to get that across this year. And the one decrease in the budget is that we removed the crossing guards from our budget, and that's going to be added to it. The school department's also a line item that we've been trying to move for a couple of years, and have able to do that this year. That's kind of a quick summary of, again, where our increases come from, and I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
Thank you, Chief. If you would talk to us a little bit more about the two mental health clinicians. Are they going to be contract, or will they be LPD employees, and what type of services can we look forward to, and will we need to assist with any kind of support services for them?
Sure. So this is something that I've been advocating for a little bit and talking to the mayor about. And like I said, this is something that's really have gone on in the last year or so in policing. So they will be Lawrence City employees. They will be budgeted positions, if you will, posted positions, and then we'll obviously do some extensive background and interview process with them. So these are, I would imagine, PhD type individuals in the health field. And certainly there are some groups in the city that we've been working with to try to get some guidance on that. And so basically, we're still evolving the protocol and how we're going to use them, but we envision some sort of dual role, really. One where we could utilize them in situations where we can have them respond to scenes where they may be able to be that civilian sort of non-law enforcement person that may be able to talk individuals out of situations where they're having a mental health issue or a breakdown, and try that approach and sort of remove law enforcement from that role, certainly if it's safe to do so. And also, again, the big thing would be following up on like what we do now with the opioid crisis, when we have an individual that overdoses, or we have, like I said, the domestic violence team that we put together has been tremendously successful in advocating and helping those victims, get resources and services that they need, hopefully to remove them from situations that don't escalate. So we're hoping to try to capture that same sort of dynamic in these positions.
Thank you. It's certainly an achievement. It is something that should have passed on the 22nd. Not only should you be proud of, but the city should be. It is a support service that your women and men deserve, and I'm glad to see it's proposed in your budget. With that, we're pretty familiar. I'm familiar with at least 3 of the 5 contractual raise obligations, and the crossing guards. I'll finish my questions with the crossing guards. So it's moved over to the school budget. Is it something? Had it always been essentially a school directed operation, or was there a change in philosophy here on crossing guards?
So really, in evaluating that in that program, for me, 23 plus schools, and really the only thing that we kind of managed was trying to hire these individuals, and they had a director or a supervisor, and David Hernandez, parking enforcement, was kind of involved as well in trying to manage them. So the way I look at it, these are 23 really sort of substations, if you will, or, almost like communities in and of themselves. Each school is unique in its issues with traffic and safety and things of that nature. We really don't have the manpower or the capability of being on scene in all those locations daily and trying to manage the problem. So for me, really the people that have the fundamental information regarding each and every school are the teachers, the principals, the parents that go there, the security guards. Those are non-law enforcement personnel, non-police personnel. So those people really have a unique capability to manage their own schools. So for me, it would make sense that the supervision for each and every one of those schools, meaning the crossing guards, should come from the schools themselves. Like I said, I think that they're unique in their function. Each one of them has unique situations, and for us to pop in, so to speak, dating, to try to manage a particular situation, only to leave again and come back to another school. And as you know, we're bouncing around to 70,000 plus calls of service a year. It's difficult for us to really get a grasp on each and every one of them. Now, certainly, we're not going to pull out, so to speak, from our responsibilities there. If they need us to do some, traffic enforcement for a while, if that's what they're seeing, if they need help with speed bumps through the DPW, we'll help facilitate those sort of things. If they need us to come in and do talks and things like that, we can manage those types of things. But I think the day-to-day sort of knowledge of what's going on there is unique to each and every school. And I think it's better managed by the personnel that's there every day, for 8+ hours a day.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions at this time. Colleagues, are there questions or comments? Councilor Rodriguez.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I have a few questions that I would like to talk. Chief, the first one I'm getting across as for the new building now. Once we have a new building for the police department, there is a plan or some type of intention or conversation or anything related to having that building a little bit more efficient in terms of utilities, including the electricity, because I can see here that the current building, we allocating about $85,000. I mean $70,000 for this year, 85,000 for last year. Is that conversation part of the design for the new building coming up?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, and it's actually required, with DCAM and their association with the project. So they're looking at, going as green as they possibly can. And I guess what we're doing now is trying to evaluate, everything from electrical to gas to solar, to try to figure out if there's a better way of doing that and becoming more green. And as you know, that would balance basically with the upfront cost versus the long-term savings. So that sort of analysis is being done now and trying to figure out how much money we could allocate towards, those particular services for the new building. So it's certainly something that's well noted. One that's well noted you bringing it up, because our building now, as you know, is less than sort of efficient in so many ways. So we are certainly cognizant of that, and certainly looking at the new building in terms of trying to be, 21st century and beyond in terms of its efficiency.
Okay. Chief, on the same line of purchase and services, there is an employees training. Last year we discussed this and another type of budget. So the reason that is zero this year, and it was zero in 2021 as well, that's because of the allocation the special allocation that we have of the 300,000, I believe it was.
Yes, sir. So we're pretty good with our training funds right now. So we may have to address that in a couple of years, but right now we have the previous mayor had given us some monies, and then the council gave us, an additional approval on some money. So right now we're pretty good with our training budget.
So that's the reason that we have it zeroed now for this year.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a quick question that I have on the next page. What is it? Oh yeah, on the same page on personal services, the overtime. Can you go over that line of the overtime and give us more detail how we get into that number, and having more officers as part of the force, how that balance it out, and if it should be less or more. And I know COVID is not a good year COVID last year is not a good year to kind of look into the numbers, because it could be anything. But in terms of other years that are more typical than last year, and knowing the amount of people and the amount of officers we have in place, that I believe that are close to 160, right, in total?
Yes, sir. Yep, 162.
162. So how that balance it out? Can you go over the line, please?
Sure. So in all honesty, that's really the line item that that concerns me the most. I think that line item has always been underfunded. It's been going back, we're doing a 5-year look back. Really, the line item has always been in the 420s, and realistically, we spend close to $1 million on overtime per year. Certainly, it helps having more officers and being able to cut back on the overtime, but we certainly have obligations and trying to fill minimum staffing and things like that, which causes overtime. Officers at the military, officers at training, officers at sick, officers that are injured, and things of that nature that causes overtime. Officers on vacation, things of that nature. So year after year, we've been fortunate in not having to go back to the council for additional funding for that line item. But in reality, that line item is probably about $600,000 short. We spend close to $1 million or $1.1 million in overtime, and the line items is somewhere in the 420 area. Realistically, we're spending a lot more than that. And I can tell you that looking at other departments, like Haverhill as an example, spends $2.1 million in overtime, and that's a product of them being understaffed. That's a big thing that they're trying to fix. So that causes more overtime. So I think we're spending pretty good for the amount of officers that we have and what we're dealing with. But the line item itself is always low. But we've been fortunate to save money in other categories and sort of transfer the money at the end of the year to become zeroed out at the end of the year, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So with the firefighter department, we have an allocation of 350,000 last week and 100,000 for another line item. And basically, the most concern that they have is that they have the ILD line item that was kind of like a big impact to the budget. What's based on your experience as a chief, what is the most concern that you have for the overtime that we haven't worked on, and how do you think that we should be working as a city together to make sure that this is satisfied?
Well, I'm not sure what the fire department's overtime line item is for overtime, but ours, like I said, has not moved in many years, and I think it's stated. And really, what the overall number is, like I said, it's closer to $1 million, and I think it's budgeted for 420 or something like that. That never changes. And like I said, we've been fortunate. So you brought up COVID. This year alone, our court costs are a lot lower because court was closed for quite a bit. So we transferred money from that line item over to our overtime account to make sure that we stayed whole and didn't go negative. I know the fire department came looking for more funds for their overtime, and that's probably as a result of not having the ability of saving money in another line item like we did. We were fortunate in that category. But at some point, realistically down the line, we may be ourselves, not this year. I think, we're pretty good. We're going to come under budget again, but I think there may be down the road years where we're coming back to the council for additional funding for overtime. Hope not, but having that line item be lower than realistically what it should be, it's, the theory is that at some point we may run into that problem, and we'll have to address it then. So I would like to see the line item higher, but it is what it is, and we do the best we can to manage that number with transferring monies from other line items to cover it.
All right. I have no more further questions. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Mr. Rodriguez. Questions, comments from other counselors? No further questions or comments.
Mr. Chair.
I see the hand. Sorry, Mr. Payano. You gotta get used to the little blue hands. Mr. Payano, the floor is yours, sir.
Maybe the chair doesn't want to give me a turn. No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Councilor Rodriguez, for some of your questions. I had some questions around the employee training. In our current book, it has us spending as of May 11th, 17,000. And if I recall, I don't recall the exact number that we allocated, because I know it was over a period of 2 years or maybe 3 years, but I think it was 120 or maybe a little bit more per year that we had we had approved a year ago. So I'm just interested to know, like, why is it, training only listed as $17,000 and we're halfway through. I know that you guys have done, there's a lot of work that you've done when it comes to professional development. So I'm interested, one, just an opportunity for others to hear about that type of work, and then two, just trying to figure out why isn't it reflected in the book.
Yeah, so certainly we've done a lot of training. We continue to do a lot of training. A lot of it has been online because of COVID. I believe the reason you're seeing that low number versus a higher number is because we have that other line item of that was approved by the council that we've been using. But Eileen is on the call. Maybe Eileen, am I getting that right, or is there something I'm missing in that description?
Yeah. Chief, you're exactly right. The money that's coming out of the general fund is what you're seeing. So it's a much lower number because the bulk of our training comes from the funds that you gave us, which are in a separate line item, as well as grants and stuff that we go seek out. Like every officer here got a 911 training this year, 8 hours, 16 hours of 911 training. We pay for that through a grant. So none of that shows up. Most of the trainings that we do, though, are not through the general fund. So what you're looking at is not showing any of our training. So we can get you, we actually keep track of all the training that our officers do. We can get you that, but that's not in the general fund. So you're not seeing that reflected.
So I've thankfully, like I've seen that list. The chief has provided that list to me in the past. I know it's an extensive list, and I'm sure other council members would love to see kind of what LPD has been doing when it comes to this. I think that that list of professional development has definitely grown since the chief has come on. So it's a really good way, and I would say to all my colleagues in the council that definitely should take a look at that. I'd love to know how much money is in. I don't need to know now, but like if you could provide, like how much money is in there now. I know like it's. I think training is an important part of any type of workforce, in particularly folks that are our first responders. So I think that there is tremendous value in that. And, as a supporter in those initiatives, I want to make sure that we are, that we are good. Because I think that it was allocated for, I want to say 3 years. So that means that if it's less than that, then probably it needs to be at next year's budget. If not, it'll be the year after. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping track of that. So if we can get that information sometime in the future, that would be great.
Right now, I can tell you that in fiscal year FY21, which would be July 1 through June 30th, the year that we're in right now, we have spent $140,000 to date on training through the funds that you guys allocated for us specifically. The initial agreement was to spend it over 2 years with the understanding that it might be more like 3, just realistically. But that was a 2 to 3 year window is what we had talked about at the council level. But the year to date so far, as of June 3rd, any money that's been encumbered is $140,000.
And do you recall how much money is left in that item?
It was a $300,000 allocation that you had given us. So of that money, there is 160 left.
Okay, I mean, so
that's
good
kind
to
of
know.
right where we should be. Yeah.
So that means that so that means that with these funds are allocated, so basically like next year, whoever is mayor is going to have to look at the training line item and allocate some funds to that. So that's good to know. The other thing is I just want to talk a little bit about the mental health clinician. I just want to applaud the Lawrence Police Department in sort of taking that approach. I think it'll be interesting to see how, how that position, like the work that it will entail and how it will connect to what, LPD is currently doing. But I think at least taking that initiative and, going in and planning for that, I think is key and important. I think that, when we talk about public safety, I think that there's a huge mental health aspect that comes with it, both with the residents that we're serving and also within the police department. So I don't know exactly the role that these clinicians would play. I'm sure that you will be defining that in the next few months before they come in. But I definitely interested in hearing more, and I think that this is the right direction. And I'm always proud that when we're talking about the different changes, the different things that the type of police reform that should be happening across the state and across the country, I can always say like, oh, well, here in Lawrence, we're doing that. In Lawrence, we have a diverse police department that reflects the community. In Lawrence, we're doing the type of trainings that you would wish that police departments were doing, like, ensuring that there's cultural competency. And, seeing this, it basically, I'm happy to see that we're moving in that direction. So kudos to all of you, and definitely supportive of that. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payano. Further questions, comments from fellow members? Mr. Rodriguez.
Unless that Councilor Levy has some questions. Okay. Chief, I have a few other questions that it's interesting to see result and see how those positions have worked out for the department. Now that we are into two new positions that is going to work with mental health. 2 years ago, we had the director of police and community relationship, or the community liaison. How that position have worked for the community and the police department, and bringing positive result, if any. Can you highlight those, if any?
Sure. I would just say that couldn't be happier with the work that Director Sandy Almonte has done in her office in taking on that role. Domestic violence, as we all know, is a serious problem, and one that continues to increase today. I would say the proof is in that we are asked by a number of agencies, a number of departments across the Commonwealth to speak on the matter, how our group is being formed, how we're running it. They want our policies and procedures, our working group. I think it would be, I think it would be advantageous if Sandy were to come to, the Public Safety Committee and put a presentation on. I mean, I don't think I'm doing it justice and telling you that the work that they're doing is tremendous and pulling individuals out of situations and giving families services. I think it would, I think that she could do a better job in explaining all the different groups that they do. I can just tell you that, our policies and procedures have gone in domestic violence, have gone from, like, say, 3 pages to, a book, in terms of like what we're really supposed to be doing in 21st century policing and what's going on in the world. So really, she has taken us to the next level. And like I said, we're sort of a model program for other departments in the Commonwealth to follow in terms of how we're getting those resources from the officer to Sandy's group, and then to the services that are out there, and identifying those services that are available. Everything from a hotel room to, to psychiatric services to, mental health services, all of those sort of things that she does, in working with, the different communities and the different groups that are out there. There's so many resources that are out there, but if you don't have someone that's sort of the captain, if you will, of that organization, and of telling people where all those services are, advocating for them, then it doesn't work. And I think we were able to pull all those things together in our group. So I think, I think we're a model program. I think she's done a tremendous job. Her and her group have done a tremendous job. But I would love for her to come and speak to you and the other counselors about exactly what that program is, what statistically she's seeing, trends, what kind of services were available both before and after. And I think if you saw, and again, we would bring in those documents. So if you saw what we were doing before in terms of the documentation by the officers and what they are now doing, the questions that they're asking, the strangulation type things and things you wouldn't even think of before that we are now doing, that's really best practices nationwide that we are now doing here. I think you would be overwhelmed with how good the program is and its effectiveness in the community. I have no doubt that they've saved lives by pulling people out of situations that they were able to provide different services, whether it's housing, like I said, or mental health type services, or even really going after the offenders more. We have two detectives that are assigned to the unit, specifically following up on cases again. So we're trying to stop things from escalating to a homicide. Really, that's the end result, right? And I think we've been effective in that. And I think a lot of it is the work that they're doing. So I think that my vision for the mental health clinicians would be something along those lines as well. So I envision it being under Sandy's umbrella, along with the opioid individuals that we have working on the opioid crisis and the overdoses that we have. So really, it's going to be like a three-tiered approach: mental health, opioids, and domestic violence. All of them working together, because a lot of the issues kind of cross over each other. So I think that they have a lot that they could get from each other in providing more services. So the mental health clinicians would not only provide sort of a responding to situations live if necessary, but also the follow-up. That's really where I believe our gains are going to be made. So that's kind of like the mindset in developing the program.
So essentially, those the new mental clinicians, the mental health clinicians that we're gonna have, they're gonna be working together with the police and community liaison.
Absolutely. I think they have to. All of those, like I said, all of those three categories, I think, are interchangeable in their services, and some of them cross over each other. I think that would be, best that they all coordinate with each other as to what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that it is important to highlight those, because at the end of the day, sometimes we approve positions and we don't see a follow up after that, because I mean the work is being done, but when it comes to later during the year the budget, and then we kind of like hesitant about new things coming up because we don't see perhaps a presentation like you said
Right.
of previous position that we have approved. And I think it will be very very important to have that type of connection, and that way we see that in terms of approving the budget, obviously, but most importantly, having that connection between the counselors and those new positions that we approve, and the program behind those positions, not those two positions, but those positions in general, and the result that those are bringing to the community. If these positions that we are discussing today are bringing a different approach for the police department and the police services at the end of the day, that's a great thing for the community. And I'm glad that things have worked out with that. I have another questions, and thank you for the update on that. I have another question in terms of the crossing guards. The crossing guard, I know that the chair already spoke about this, but are we the police department have that conversation with the school department in terms of making sure that is the crossing guard is going over there, and the logistic of how to operate those and the transition periods between the two?
Yeah. So first I went to the mayor and asked him, his and told him my thoughts on the subject, and obviously had that conversation with Superintendent Paris, not only this year but in previous years, and why I thought that it was beneficial that the crossing guards go into the school. And certainly we anticipate some bumps in the road in terms of, like anything new, anything transition, there's going to be a learning curve, and we're there to support them. We are not just going to sort of turn the keys over to them and walk away. We'll be there to guide them, answer questions, obviously jump in. Like I said, we're always going to be there to support them with other resources that they need to fix whatever the problem is. I just think the day-to-day operations is better suited with them. So we have met, we have talked about the issue, and I'm sure we're going to continue to do that.
All right. That's something that I'll definitely going to place that item on the agenda for us to have continue that conversation of the safety committee as well, because I believe it is extremely important to make sure that our kids coming into the school and getting out are safe. And eventually we'll see if the conversation might require your position and your opinion and experience on that item. Um, I think that it's important that we continue to have that conversation. So eventually, we'll have that on the safety committee to make sure that we have that transition period in place. So finally, I have one more question, and this is about auxiliary police. I would like to say thank you first for working with the new mayor to increase the budget between what it was before used to be $8,000, now is double, $16,000. So we are talking about, a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of the total budget of more than $3 million that we have in the city of Lawrence. And knowing the importance of the auxiliary police and how they do work that are basically, we know, looking back of what they're doing, basically doing an important job on work that the city needs. The first thing that come to my mind is that of May 11, when this budget was put together, almost 3 weeks ago, the line item 5425 of page 77, it's only 1,730, and they have $6,000 for that, which is the supplies, operating supplies, as well as the uniform replacement. They haven't spent any money out of the $4,000 that they have available. And my question come to mind is like, I know that, probably this
They have spent.
well, not according to
Sorry.
the budget.
Which page are you on, Counselor?
7-7.
I'd be so rude. I apologize. I'm just looking on the computer and I can see the deductions.
So, and I subject 5581, the uniform replacement. So far they haven't spent any money according to us, up to May 11. Probably after that they have to spend some.
Sure. There, I'm showing a zero on there, meaning that the zero on their uniform replacement. I'm showing they have $5,900 worth of encumbrances based on a $6,000 budget. They had $4,000. They carried over from last year. They spent $5,900 of it, and they have $92 left. They actually spent quite a bit of money on their uniforms this year.
So in uniform so far, you have a better numbers that shows that they have spent up $4,000, and the operation supply, the $6,000 has been almost to $0 right now, right?
But that would be under the line item, the 5581, which is the one you were referencing, the uniform replacement. That is basically all used up. The other line item that you referenced, Counselor, was the 5425 for operational supplies. I am seeing money in there. They did have $6,000. They spent about $2,000. They still have about $4,000 left.
So
and I do reach out to their chief and let him know that they have funds. He usually does encumber them. So, but they do have about $4,000 left in that line item.
yeah, do you guys have a plan, or can we put a plan together to make sure that we spend that money within the next month in terms of operating supply, because the needs is there. So I don't know.
No, it's
I don't wanna see the budget that we have worked so much to get an increase to just go back to the general fund. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
No, it's a point well taken, and we are now going from a $16,000 budget to a $32,000 budget. So there's going to be a lot more money to be spent there.
Yeah.
So what we're planning on for this year coming is to better plan for all of the money usage, not try to wait till the last minute. I think COVID had something to do with holding back on buying some uniforms, but they will spend that money before June 30th. But we are trying to come up with a better plan with them to try to spend the money during the course of the year, not tried to wait till the end. They seem to like want to wait till the end and buy everybody uniforms, which is fine. But to your point, we don't make sure that we come into a situation where we can't spend the money.
Exactly. So just make sure that we develop a plan in terms of expending the line item 5425, the operating supplies, because that's basically the other one, which is uniform replacement, according to Arlene Bernard, that has been close to zero as of today. So good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief and Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. Councilor Bernard, thank you so much for all your answers.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Chief. And Ms. Brunel, are there any further questions or comments for the Chief of the Police Department? Hearing and seeing none, taking a quick look at the blue hands, no blue hands. We are, looks like we're good, Chief. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Former Councilor Brunel, thank you for your assistance tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor. Go Bruins.
Go Bruins. All zeros right now. With that, I will turn over to our Fire Chief, Brian Moriarty. Chief Moriarty, if you're here with us this evening, if you would unmute yourself and identify yourself for the record and present your budget.
Yes, sir. And fellow councilors, Councilor Brian Moriarty, Lawrence Fire Chief, 65 Lowell Street. This is our fiscal budget for the fiscal year 22 with the mayor's recommendations. Our budget is fairly boring this year. We did not add anyone. We have one raise left that begins July 1st of this year in the contractual CBA that has been negotiated, which is 2.5%. And all the increases that we have, the $418,000 increase, are related to that, with the exception of one item, which is now known as, it's always been known as Code Red, but now it is completely in our budget. The first 3 years of that, I wrote applied for a grant and we received it. It paid for a little over 2 years. Last year, the mayor's office came up with the last $4,000 or $5,000. And this year, I presented to Mr. Iannello and Mayor Vasquez that we needed to put it in somebody's budget to pay for it if we, in fact, wanted to keep it. The choice was yes, we wanted to keep it. And so they added it to the fire department budget. It doesn't go to any of my firefighters. It pays for the contract, which never goes up. We're locked in. So that price should never change. But that is the emergency notification system that we did not have during the gas crisis. It's kind of a result of the gas crisis that we have a way to notify people of an emergency now. And that's really it. The staffing is exactly the same with the, in the office admin, I'll make a small correction. I no longer have a office manager. I have a payroll specialist, which saved us a little money. Correction, the other title was support services manager. I now have a payroll specialist, which is approximately $9,000 cheaper than what I had before. But any questions, I'd be more than willing to accept them. It's pretty status quo for us. I think that you should be happy and proud of what we are accomplishing with the staff that we have. We have not increased our staffing since our last grant, which was 4 or 5 years ago. And we've been able to increase our pump capacity to 5 pumps because we had a squad, thanks to you people all giving us the money over the years, as well as we've replaced 6 out of the 7 apparatus that we run We now have 6 stations in operation, so we have better response time, the better water coverage. So I think we've done a lot without costing much more. I'm not gonna say no more, because there is a CBA obligation, but I really am open to questions.
Thank you, Chief. I don't have any. I would turn it over to my colleagues. Counselors, are there questions regarding this? Again, another pretty straightforward, flat budget. Are there questions regarding any aspect of it? Councilor Payano.
Yeah, so no question, just a quick statement. Thank you. So one, I like boring budgets. Those are great, especially when they're boring budgets and the job's getting done, right? I just want to say, I mean, not think just to you and to the men and women in your department for not just thanking them for their service, but also thinking like there's a lot more. Years ago we shut down a lot of the different neighborhood sort of services that are being provided, and slowly over the past couple of years, seeing the buildup has been great. And driving by some of these places and seeing them active, it definitely there's a certain level of pride, seeing that. Not just that, it's just this awareness that your community is a little bit more safer. I think a lot of times, if someone reports a heart attack, there are many times where firefighters are there before EMT. So ensuring that level of service stays there, I think is key, and I'm glad that that we're there, and that that the city is moving forward when it comes to that. So I just wanted to thank you for all your work with that.
Well, I will accept your thanks, Counselor, on behalf of the men and women of the Lawrence Fire Department, because I just play a small role in that. I have a bunch of very talented people who work very hard. I'm especially proud of some of our younger firefighters recently who have started to use some of their skills that aren't necessarily firefighting to improve our public relations aspect with some videos that just kind of went a little popular this week, but I'm kind of happy with it. I've actually asked for that in the past, and it just took a little while for people to warm up to it. But I have one young firefighter who's very much into it, did a very popular video. I'm getting a lot of comments for that. They also now, I had a firefighter who says, Chief, this lady came out and welcomed us to the neighborhood when we came back. He said, we're part of the neighborhood. He goes, I love it. So we've also been very much involved with the COVID over the last year. And since March, we've been running the Arlington School site in conjunction with many other people, but the fire department has organized it and run it. That site is shut down, but we're supporting the pop-up sites when asked. We were asked for today, and we supplied some. I don't know that we've been asked for tomorrow. So we have done a lot, and I thank you for that. And it's because we have a good bunch of people. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Mr. Rodriguez.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. Chief, thank you so much for being here, presenting this budget tonight, fiscal year 2022. Chief, I have a question in regard to the stipend. It's a page 83. Is the last one on the bottom. It's 237,550. Can you go through that line item and explain to us what is the things that you guys do for that money?
Yes, I can. That one, I believe, is the educational stipend. The firefighters in their contract, collective bargaining agreement, have the ability to go to go to the academy and take classes. COVID, like we are tonight, forced the academy to find another way to educate people. So, I mean, that stipend is voluntary. They have to put in 30 hours worth of education and they'll get a 2% bump in their pay. And that's for all ranks. And now it's easier. They still have to put some time in. Some courses are very, very difficult and have a lot of pre-study, but they're virtual. They don't have to drive to Stowe. They don't have to drive to another community that might be sponsoring a class. So that has caused quite a bit of an increase in the amount of people that took those classes, as well as EMT stipend, CPR stipend, the medical awareness. That's all bunched in that area there. So they get paid for those.
Gotcha.
It would be nice if it was just built into their base pay, but that takes bargaining and it's still a stipend.
Yeah, I just wondering, I've been asking that question for others, so I would like to keep on getting explanation as of why. Thank you, Chief, for the explanation. Another suggestion that I have, now that you mentioned that the firefighter department is part of the community. And I believe so. I mean, the fact that the department have different stations in different neighborhoods, that means that the intention is to be part of the community, and you guys are. Thank you for that. A suggestion that I have is the following. It is a possibility for those neighborhood associations that are close to a firefighter station to have the presence of the firefighter department when those meetings are happening. Just not necessarily every meeting, but sometime, probably a pump truck pulling over to the parking and be able to kind of like, get in touch with the neighborhood and talk to the neighborhood. Probably not necessarily having a formal section on the agenda for the neighborhood association, but mostly the presence of the firefighter department on site meant a lot. Also called other people's attention, and they probably wonder what's happening there, and they probably get involved. And why not? It's a matter of getting people involved.
I can absolutely have a truck come to a neighborhood meeting. As you know, we haven't had any in over a year.
I know.
Recently, very recently, I've been asked for some children to start appearing at stations. I've got 5 visitations scheduled out now with youth groups to teach some basic fire safety for a merit badge at a station 4 Thursdays in July. This Saturday, it's not this Saturday. I think it's a week from Saturday at the park is the vaccination, what do they call it? A block party. We're going to have a truck there. This coming up next Thursday, we're going to help fill a dunk tank for a school, Oliver School field day. So we are reaching out to the community where it's available now. But as you know, being at Neighborhood Associate, we haven't had them for over a year now.
I know. Go because
when that starts again, I absolutely can bring them.
yeah, I mean, it's a matter, like I said, it's a matter of being there, presence, and probably other people from around. They probably wonder, I mean, what is a truck there? And they probably go there and talk and ask, and then we get them involved.
Absolutely can.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Rodriguez. Other questions or comments for the fire department or the chief? Seeing and hearing none, I want to thank, on behalf of my colleagues, Chief Moriarty, for joining us this evening and your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councilors, and see you at the big meeting.
22nd, 7 p.m.
22nd. All right, I'm in. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Good night. The next item this evening is the Lawrence Public Schools, and the Lawrence Public Schools will be represented this evening by Superintendent Cynthia Paris. And I see some of her senior staff on as well. So with that, I will turn it over to the superintendent, ask her to identify herself for those at home and for the record, and to present her budget.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Cynthia Paris. I'm the superintendent of the Lawrence Public Schools. I'm joined tonight by my colleague and chief financial officer, Maciel, who is actually going to do the initial presentations. And together we're going to then entertain questions and share with you all the highlights of our budget. Maciel, whenever you're ready, I think that you have our budget with you all. If not, we're happy to screen share. But I'll start by saying that the budget was driven in collaboration with our board. We designed budget goals that include, and I'll read from this here, we have 4 big goals as student achievement, student support, to grow a culturally responsive workforce, and of course, to deepen family and student partnerships. After designing these goals, we met internally with every single school team. That includes, of course, the principals and the teacher leadership teams. They designed their internal goals to match those overall district goals. And each and every single team came before the central office leaders to review those goals and how the resources were going to be put forth to our budget. I'll give you some highlights of what some of that was. Under the first priority, student achievement, we added an additional 14 FTEs. Things that you will see in that budget includes things like reading specialists for students who continue to struggle with decoding and encoding. It includes things like digital resources that were very necessary during this virtual learning and that we adopted and feel are necessary. And more importantly, it includes professional development to continue to give our teachers and staff the skills they need to meet our students' needs. In the priority and in the bucket of student support, we added 28 FTEs, and they include an additional 16 teachers for special education. They also include adjustment counselor. These are the staff members that continue to support the mental health of our students. Another example of student support includes additional training for teachers in the form of reading. And then, of course, expanded and rigorous summer programming under student support. The third one is to grow a culturally responsive workforce. As you know, our student body is in the high 90s Latino, and we are committed to continue to representing the staff that also looks like our students. And towards that effort, we're going to have tuition reimbursement for the para to teacher program. Just last night, we graduated our 3rd cohort. We're very, very proud of that program. Then we are contracting with consultants who are going to assist us in our recruited onboarding and continual retention of our staff. But more importantly, we are committed to being an anti-racist district, and we're also have a consultant that's going to help us meet that goal. And lastly, the priority of deepening the family and student partnerships, we added 1 FTE for family engagement specialist to our L department. That's our English learner department. We have also invested in the Lionbridge phone interpretation services. That is a service that all of our schools have access to ensure that our families are getting native language interpretation and translation services. Then we are investing in the back to school helpline. With COVID, we had that present. We're going to keep that going. We also are investing in a program called ELFIS. This is a program that supports our families in understanding how to continue to advocate for their students and help them navigate the system as new arrivals to our district or as families that have been in the districts and continue to require the additional support. And lastly, for our youngest learners and our youngest families, we have a Play to Learn workshop. This is, again, supporting our families to understand how to onboard and what it looks like to have our youngest learners, preschoolers, and kindergartens in our community. There are many, many other details to this budget, but those are the 4 big priorities. Again, these were co-designed with our board principals and central office leaders, and of course, our teachers. We're happy to take questions for any of this. And Maciel is also with me, so please feel free to ask questions of either one of us.
Okay, so first of all, Superintendent, thank you very much. And thank you to you and your administration staff and the educators for this last year and getting through this year. And hopefully we're all back at it next September. Can you, Maciel, break down for us, if you will, the priorities are self-explanatory. The $13.5 million increase over the next 12 months. Do you want to take that, or Ms. Jordan?
Go ahead, Maciel, you can jump in here.
Sure. So the actual increase for us is, after all is said and done, actually turns out to be about 11 million. I think the $13 million that you have as a number is due to the more updated amount that I believe Mark used. But when we worked through it in our budget process, we're working off the governor's numbers that were issued in January. So we are pretty much, we allocated all that through what Cynthia said. So we added all the FTEs that she said and all the programs that she stated. So if you would like us to give you more detail on that, we can definitely do so. But that's exactly what Cynthia detailed out is what we're doing with the additional 11 million. The additional 1-point-something million that was just allocated to us is something that we will be discussing, and we will be able to present to you when we once we actually get the final budget over the summer.
Okay, so the headline there is, I count 43 new FTEs.
Mhm.
And those are not term, they are permanent employees, and so that will be part of your structural budget going forward.
They will be. Yes, they will be. So there was a change to the formula that was done in recent years. So that's actually in the last 2 years, I believe, Cynthia, that there was a review done of the net school spending formula in Chapter 70, particularly for district like ours, trying to address some equity issues. And so that is what caused the increase to be higher this year, is the new formula. So that's the reason why we were able to add FTEs using this money, because it is going to be continuously at this level. The increase won't be at this level, but we will be maintained at this level to be able to support adding FTEs.
Okay. I'm going to continue looking at my other monitor here and looking at the numbers. I don't have any further immediate questions. I want to thank you, Ms. Jordan, for your response.
Okay.
And let me at this time turn it over to my colleagues. Are there counselors that have questions? Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I have a few questions. Well, what my intentions tonight was to transfer this department to be able to discuss it in our next meeting, because of the fact that we actually get the book probably like 3-4 hours ago, and this is 73% of the total budget that we have in the city of Lawrence. So if my colleagues want that to happen, I'm open for that discussion. But in the meantime, I'm going to focus on a few schools that I have in my district. And the first one that comes to my mind, which my heart is the Gilmet, page 44. I wanted to hear the safety plan that we have for the Gilmet. Obviously, as we probably all know, the Gilmet School is one of the schools that is basically on the center of most of the most violent section of the city of Lawrence, and this is the district that I represent. I see here that for some reason we have no safety officer for the Gilmet. is this is a typo or this is something that I'm reading wrong, please let me know. Because I mean, it is something that I was expecting to see, not taking the safety officer out of the budget. And if it is a plant, please let me know. Also, I was going to bring the same topic that I have bring another and previous year about legal med, and is basically transferring most of the people that started there, get the experience at legal med, and then going to another school. That's an operational portion, but at the end of the day, the district that I represent is have the repercussions of that, and that happened this year as well with the safety officer. So two different things. Safety officer is cut from the budget, and second of all, the previous safety officer that we have had on that school for years, that built a great relationship with the kids, now is moving on to the high school. So how are we going to approach the safety issue of the Gilmet school, knowing the fact that the Gilmet is in the center of the most violent crime in the city of Lawrence?
Happy to address that, Councilor Rodriguez. As you know, in my tenure, we have not had any violent incidents in the Gilmet. Second, to your question about the long tenured safety officer that currently still has his position there, I can assure you that that safety officer is not only there, but is well embedded in the community and loved by the current principal, Principal Smith, and her team. And if you were to visit tomorrow, you will find him greeting families, greeting students by name, and more importantly, making sure that everyone is safe at the Gilmet. We also have another safety officer at the middle school, and the reason you do not see them under the Gilmet budget is because they're under a different department. So just because you do not see a position there that may normally have been there doesn't mean that it has been removed. As a reminder, our schools have autonomy in their budget, and so they often will change different positions. We have ensured that every single school has what we call outfitted with several positions that you may not see there. One is a nurse, second, a safety officer, third, a counselor, and lastly, we make sure that all of our schools have enough custodians, nutrition services. So all of those things will be part of every single one of our schools, but that does not mean they will be reflected in their autonomous budget. We have other departments and you will see them housed in those other departments.
Well, let me go back and explain myself a little bit. I'm not saying that the Gilmet is a violent school. Not at all. With Flete there, forget about it. Flete is the best. I'm saying the area, the district that I represent, have the most significant crime statistic in the city of Lawrence. And most of those students are going to the Gilmet. That's why I'm referring to have a safety plan now, because of the fact that we're losing a well-experienced and well-loved officer that used to work there, that is going to be moved to another location. So if the safety officer is within the budget, okay, fine, not a problem. I just don't see I just was looking into other school and they keep the same consistency. So when I look at the Gilmet, obviously it makes me question the safety officer position, knowing the fact that the statistics showing in the district that the school is located, it's a very significant amount of crime that happened there, not on the school. Let's be clear with that. but in the area. And a lot of the students that are exposed to those crimes are going to the Gilmet, and therefore that represent a good or significant amount of situation that those students witness and probably bring to the school. Not saying that's the case, but it could be if we lose control of the safety of the school. And probably not, but at the end of the day, a statistic shows that when there is a change on something so important and significant as this, like safety, it could turn around to have significant events, such as things that we don't want to see, especially at the Gilmet School. So that's why I'm bringing this up, because it's extremely important to me that we keep our students safe. When I look at the budget of the Gilmet as well, I see that we have uh, another another cat that is the one of the a teacher and instructional coaches. Is that was a teacher or that was an instructional coach that was cut from the budget? That's basically at the end of page 44, the last line item on the staffing.
Councilor Rodriguez, the chief has done an excellent job to keep our city safe, including the Gilmet neighborhood. And as I mentioned, in the past 3 years, there has not been one incident where our families or students have been in danger. And to your comment about Officer Flete, as I mentioned, he continues to be on staff. He is beloved there and takes care of students' families and everyone else. So I have no concerns about that. And as I mentioned, his position is housed in a different department. So I can assure you that there is no safety concerns and that our chief has done an excellent job at keeping that neighborhood safe in the past 3 years. If there's a concern about safety, that belongs to the chief. The in-house and safety of our students belongs to Officer Flete. And as you've mentioned, he's excellent about keeping that safety. But more importantly, what we value about Officer Flete is his ability to care deeply about our families and know them, because he is not an armed officer. That belongs to the chief. His job is to keep the safety within the school, and nothing has happened in that neighborhood in the past 3 years. So I can assure you, you do not have to worry about the safety within the school. To your question about the position, as I mentioned, the schools have autonomy. Principal Smith has decided to change that position, and we have granted that.
My question was, is that a teacher or instructional coach?
Again, the school has autonomy, and whatever Principal Smith has decided, we have granted that.
And my question is that a teacher or instructional coach? Third time I asked the same question.
They're both. They're both. As I said, it's autonomous, so Principal Smith can decide if that becomes a teacher or becomes a coach.
So you don't know yet if that's a teacher that was caught or that's an instructional coach that get caught?
It's neither. So again, what I'm trying to say is that because our schools have autonomy, whatever you see discrepancy in those positions can be that principal in turn turned that one position into a coach or vice versa. And so what we do centrally is ensure that every student has the teacher they need and that the student to teacher ratio is reasonable, and better yet, that they have the supports to surround each student.
All right, let's go back to that safety plan that I would like to keep on discussing if you want to keep on talking about that. So the safety of the school, while the officer that is there is no question. The safety of the neighbor, you probably don't know. I do know. So it is a question to the chief, yes, and that's why I'm keeping both separate. But with that in mind, I also noticed that it was no safety officer on the budget for the Gilmet. So of course, as a counselor for this area, knowing the fact that most of the students from my district are going to either the Bruce or the Gilmet, of course, I need to keep on fighting for that. I need to make sure that the safety of the school or a safety plan, knowing the fact that the current safety officer, as far as I know, was going to be moved to another location, it is a concern to me that we cutting the current position, but you just clarified that it is within the budget. We're going to have a safety officer in place as any other school have, and I was expecting to see a replacement of the current officer if it got moved, hopefully now, to a representation that actually can do the work on that location, knowing the fact that within that school, and I'm going to repeat myself, within that school, there is a good amount of crime happening around, and I know because I'm the counselor from this area, and I know I have a lot of information as of how this neighborhood is been suffering because of this. So it's not a question to you, and both of those topics are being separate, but one goes together with the other one because of the fact that the students are going to the Gilmet. So with that said, if the safety officer is within the budget, and then I hope that if it is any change on the actual personnel of the Gilmet and the safety of the Gilmet of the students, we are actually aware and will take care of and be in a better position. So with that said, I'm going to go back to actually page 28 of the budget. And within the short amount of time that I have, I actually was looking into it, into those two schools to see how we are going to be, the students from my district are going to be well represented.
So I can't turn, I don't have the book.
I did, if you do have access to your email, I did send a PDF a couple of hours ago. I know it's not the book. But I would note it's about 3 hours ago. Mr. Rodriguez, you still have the floor. Do you yield?
Well, I
Or
mean, I actually can yield the floor to discuss what Councilor Payano concerns.
Mr. Rodriguez yield? Mr. Payano, do you have questions?
Thank you. So a couple of things, but before I get to the budget, just listening to the safety conversation as someone who's grown up in that area, I would say that yes, there is a safety concern in that neighborhood. And that's something that we try to hold the chief accountable to regularly, sort of asking what's going on, and we constantly meet on that. And I would say even if the safety was 100%, I think it's asking the question and asking for a plan is a legitimate question to ask of our school system, because it's always a parent's concern, whether there are no issues or there are some issues. So I will say that it has been a parental concern. This has been an item that has been in the public safety agenda pre-COVID. We were interested pre-COVID in having these discussions. So, Councilor Rodriguez, maybe this is something that we could bring up now that we're sort of, coming out, and it's, you know, that emergency isn't as rampant as it was before, and we can continue to have those conversations because they are important. Having been someone that has worked with, you know, DYS, that has worked with CSU, that has worked with kids that are on sort of that borderline, I will say that I have plenty of students that are or were from the Gilmet and from other schools, you know, across the city, and, you know, also, you know, not necessarily that all these kids are coming from our city, but so I think that that's a legitimate concern that we can address. Unfortunately, I cannot provide any input to this conversation because I have not seen the book. I thank you, Chair, for sending us the electronic version. I see that it was sent, you know, an hour and a half before. This is a budget that's over $200 million. I will say that as a former school committee member, I look at this budget probably a little bit more than I look at our regular budget, because I'm very concerned and I'm very passionate about our school system. Every time you know, something comes up, usually like I advocate as much as I can for LPS, to the point that, you know, most budget seasons, what I say is that we should be giving more to our school systems. I can't say any of that because it just hasn't been sufficient time for us to read that. So you know, Councilor Rodriguez, I know that you want to, you know, it looks like you want to delve into it. I don't know where Councilor Levy is, but I myself won't be able to, or even in 15 minutes, read what usually is like a 100-page book. I think that we have, there's a day coming up where the vocational school is supposed to be coming in. We should have that time there available to ask, you know, questions that we might have, right? Not to say that I will have questions, but again, don't know. But there should be time for, if counselors have questions before this gets to the full council. So those are just my thoughts. I know that you have mentioned that before, Councilor Rodriguez, but you know, well, it's a concern of mine, and I want to have the opportunity to be able to read through. If other councilors feel different, I think that that's okay. I'll hold my questions till, you know, to the full meeting.
Thank you, Councilor Payano. Mr. Rodriguez, do you want the floor back?
I will say that, you know, and I think it's fair for the budget process to actually discuss this part of the budget. Like I said, 73% of the budget is on this book, 82 pages. I received a few hours ago. Councilor Payano haven't been able to see it. I don't know about Councilor Levy. I think that we should have the school department to come back on our next section and discuss this budget. The presentation was good, was great. I think that if we can put together a presentation with the numbers that we see in the budget, it would be better off. So I'd like to make a motion to have the school department to come back next section for the budget.
Second.
There is a motion proposed by Councilor Rodriguez. It's been seconded by Councilor Payano. Is there discussion? Hearing no discussion, Mr. Garcia, if you would please take a roll call.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Councilor Payano.
Yes.
Councilor Levy. Councilor Levy. Noted.
Yes.
And Chairman Abdul.
Yes. So, if I could, to the author of the motion, Mr. Rodriguez, you made the motion. Are you proposing for the additional just added to have it after we handle the other budget?
It's a huge echo, and I can't figure it out what you're saying. I don't know what happened, but I mean, did you guys hear an echo when Councilor Abdul?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Um, it- Clarification on your motion, Mr. Rodriguez. Are you suggesting next Wednesday evening, the additional night we added?
Yeah, right. But the next section for the budget, it's gonna take place. It's gonna take place on the 8th, right? No, on the 9th.
On the 9th, Wednesday, the 9th.
Wednesday the 9th. Correct. That was. I hope that was captured in the motion. Yes, Wednesday the 9th is the intention.
Mr. Garcia, did you get, if you can, make sure that's.
So they're gonna come back for Wednesday, the 9th. The next budget is gonna be the 7th of the next hearing, but you want them to come back the 9th?
It was the 7th.
No,
If we add
no.
anybody to the 7th, we won't hear them.
We wanted to have them on the next budget section. Is that the 7th is the next budget section? And then the
Yes.
7th is the date.
So the 7th is already an extremely long. Oh, are we still having audio problems? I hear it myself now. Okay, that sounds clear. I don't know what's happening here. Monday night is an extremely packed night. We've added the library in the Greater Lawrence Technical High School. My recommendation would be to add it to the Wednesday night meeting. Right now, we have just some housekeeping issues from the last meeting, plus anything that rolls over from Monday. So once we're done with the 6 routine matters, which shouldn't take very long at all, we could get right to the Lawrence Public Schools, and they would probably be the only matter of the night, unless we roll anything from Monday night.
I leave it up to the other councilors. The councilors, are you willing to meet on the 9th, or wanted to keep it on the 7th?
Well, Council, we are already meeting on the 9th. We announced that Tuesday night, so we're already meeting on the 9th.
Oh yeah, it's true. With all the you're right. Yeah, for the 9th. Correct.
Very good.
Yep.
Very good. So, Mr. Garcia, please let the record show that the request has been made that we continue this item to Wednesday night, the 9th. The meeting begins at 7 p.m.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
While the superintendent and her staff is here, does anyone have any further questions of the Lawrence Public Schools? Seeing and hearing none, I will propose questions to either Superintendent Paris or our CAFO, Mark Iannello, who is going to handle the charter schools, and should we?
I can handle it, Counselor. It'll only take a second.
Okay.
These are cherry sheet assessments.
Well, let's do this. So we can let Ms. Paris and her staff go if they're not needed for this, unless she desires to stay for it.
Well, she may be able to explain the dollar amounts, but I can just explain where the numbers come from. These are cherry sheet assessments for school choice and charter schools. And my understanding is that for the included in our state aid, in our Chapter 78 are all the students in the city of Lawrence, of which some attend charter schools. So so the state gives us 200 and some odd million. Last year, $222 million, and then they take 32 million of it and hand it off to the charter schools. I believe there's a formula that they use, and the superintendent is probably more familiar with it, but the first year a charter school opens, they fund X amount, and then they reduce the assessment accordingly, or reduce the city state aid accordingly as they to transition the charter school money from the city to the charter school. So they wean us off the Chapter 70 dollars, is my understanding.
There is a page referring to this.
That's page 106. There's 2 items. A school choice is 495,000, and charter schools is 32.8 million. And it's a direct right off the cherry sheet assessments. And I'm using the cherry sheet assessments that were issued by the House Ways and Means version on April 15th, on or about April 15th. There's a Senate Ways and Means came out with a new number on May 12th, but we had already submitted the budget, very slight changes. And in sometime in the next month, I expect a final cherry sheet will be, or the state will approve their final budget, and the cherry sheet will change slightly again. And as many counselors know, depending on what those changes are, we may be back to the council like we were in the last couple of years to appropriate additional money to the school if the final budget turns out that way. Conversely, very rarely, sometimes there's a cut to the school budget. And the last time or two that happened, we didn't go back down to the council and ask for a decrease. We figured out how to budget for it.
Thank you, Mr. Ianello. Other questions, Mr. Ianello or Ms. Paris or anyone else present this evening by my colleagues? Hearing and seeing none, that appears to conclude this evening's activities around the public schools and the charter schools until Wednesday, the 9th. Are there any questions, Superintendent or Mr. Ianello? Hearing none.
I'm all set. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you, Superintendent, to you and to your team.
Thank you.
With that, that concludes this evening's scheduled agenda items. So with that, I will entertain a motion to recess.
So moved.
Second.
The motion by Councilor Rodriguez has been properly seconded by Councilor Payano to recess until 7 p.m. on Monday evening, June 7th. Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Garcia, sir, please take a roll call.
Councilor Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Pagano,
Yes.
Councilor Levy,
Yes.
and Chairman Abdul.
Chair votes aye. We stand adjourned until 7 p.m. on Monday evening, June 7th. Thank you and have a good night.